Okay, so welcome to the Ultra Running Sam podcast. Mike Stocks.
Thanks, Sam. How you doing, mate?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, all good, thanks. All good.
Excellent. So you're coming to us from I was going to say sunny London, but is it sunny? It's been chucking it down here.
It is sun almost down, lots of rain. But yeah, we had a sunshine, I think, between about 4 and 4 this afternoon. So that was pretty good.
Yeah, awesome. We will take whatever we can get this time of year.
Exactly.
Um, so broadly speaking, then the reason why I've got you on is to talk about obviously to talk about Team Hour Seven and the professionalization, so shall we say, of ultra running and the way that the trend seems to be going towards that. But as always, before we dive into that, could you sort of give us your running history, how you got into running, and go as far back as you like, as much detail as you like, and don't be modest and hold back.
Okay, well, I won't go further back than my 30s or something. Yeah, I suppose I started like a lot of people, kind of kicking the cigarettes and the booze, or the booze that wasn't completely successful, but trying to sort of get a bit healthier in my 30s, and I started doing 10Ks and the usual stuff, and then took the marathon quite seriously for a while. And then being a South African, which you may hear somewhere deep down in the accent. I came here about 23 years ago, but it's still there, obviously. Being a South African, the Comrades Ultra Marathon is obviously a massive part of running culture in South Africa. And I grew up kind of watching all 12 hours of it on TV. So I think as a runner interested in endurance, I was always going to do the Comrades at some point. So then I did that, and that's for anyone who doesn't know, it's an amazing 56-mile race on the road. It's about 20,000 people in a road ultra, which is obviously very different to the ultras that we see here, predominantly on the trail. But absolutely wonderful experience. So I focused on that for quite a few years. Didn't really crack it, but I kind of learned a bit more each time I went back. And then when I felt I was sort of getting to grips with it to some degree, I started thinking about longer distances. And during that time, when I was doing Comrades, one of my sort of dreams was to run for England in this race called the Anglo-Celtic Plate, which is, again, for any of your listeners who don't know, it's an annual race between Wales, Scotland, England, and Northern Ireland, and sometimes Ireland are there as well, Republic of Ireland. And it's a 100K race, and it's the only sort of road ultra opportunity you get for selection at England level, or Scotland, Wales level. And I tried for years to get into the team through my performances at Comrades, and it didn't really work out. And then eventually I hooked up with an amazing coach who kind of helped bring me along to a slightly better level, and I made the England 100K team, which was sort of a bit of a dream come true. And from there, I started thinking, well, again, longer distances. I'd heard about the 24-hour races, and the idea of trying to maybe earn a GB vest by running a 24-hour race had been sort of in my mind for a while as well. And then the England thing was kind of a stepping stone towards that. So I did my first 100-miler, which was Thames Path 100, which was wonderful. One of the wonderful days of my life. I was fortunate to win that, but just had this incredible, amazing experience, just that sort of real sort of sense of community around the race, but also just that we have here in the UK in our ultras. And then having had a positive experience with a 100-mile, then thought to try the 24-hour. I then went to racing Tooting, which has now moved to Battersea at the moment, the Sri Chinmoy now Battersea 24-hour, which is actually just in a couple of weeks, so coming up quite soon. But yeah, it was at Tooting where I ran far enough to get into GB, and then went and represented GB at in France in Albi. which at the age of 50, which I do talk about because obviously it's quite an old age. I mean, ultra, I think we're all a little bit, we tend to be a bit older, but I guess yeah, just something to do at an older age in terms of I guess for myself, keeping the belief that I could still sort of get to an England or a GB level in my late 40s or early 50s was something that was quite important to me. And then since then, kind of COVID happened. Obviously, a lot of events, as we know, were cancelled for everybody. I lost a couple of chances to run for GB again, unfortunately, due to that. But anyway, since then, I sort of focused on the 100 mile. I had a good 100 mile last year at the Track 100 Centurion race put on in Bedford, where I got the I was awarded the 100-mile world record for V50 50 plus, which it was another kind of dream come true to be able to do something like that, because I wouldn't have thought that was possible some years before. And now almost 55, so now Dan Lawson's annihilated that record. I can't wait to turn 55 so I can just try and stay sort of 4 years ahead of him and some of the other amazing guys coming through. But yeah, so probably focusing on the 100-mile, looking forward to maybe the 24-hour again. I've had a couple of goes at the 48-hour. There's a tantalizing British record that I would love to get, but I've unfortunately the throwing up has got in the way on both occasions, so I haven't cracked that nut yet, but I'll probably have another go at that next year. So I think that brings us up pretty much up to today.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's such a cool story that you only started running in your 30s, and then you're breaking world records in your 50s. Like, it just shows, doesn't it, that you age. I was saying this the other day because I was interviewing the youngest guy to do lad, 20-year-old lad that did Dragon's Back, that got through that. And I was saying, we were talking about age there and saying how, we say, don't we, age is just a number. And it is, but sometimes you feel your age. And so you're 55 now, are you?
Almost, yeah, for 55 in the next April next year, so not too far away from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is, I mean, firstly, you have to be lucky. So to be able to sort of run well, as you get older, if you do just get a catastrophic injury, then that's just bad luck, or you have some genetic issue. But I think a lot of it, there is a big attitude element to it, and keeping doing the things that you have been doing. So keeping the training up, keeping the mileage up, adjusting it if necessary. So like I don't really do interval sessions now, for example, just because I think there's a higher injury risk. But I do more volume than I've ever done before. So I'm actually doing bigger mileage than I have, just by doing lots of easy runs. We've got much softer shoes now that help us. So there are things that help. But I think also as you get older, there will be a few moments, there'll be points where something happens and it's a decision point. So I had in my late 40s operation on both my ankles. I had some bone impingements in my ankles, and I think that could have been an end point for my running, and I decided I would solve it and find a way through. And it was a long way through to get back to a reasonable level after that. And I had very severe sciatica up in the 2 years up until that V50 world record. And that was a very emotional day for me, because I'd just been through the ringer for 2 years where literally I thought, will I ever be able to just run vaguely normally? I'd go and do long runs and I'd be stopping every 30 yards because the pain was just so bad. And then literally my leg wouldn't sustain my weight. My brain just would not allow me to hold my weight on my left leg at times. It was just so painful. My leg would just kind of collapse. But obviously I knew it's just a nerve, it's just a brain impulse, basically. I knew it was something I could change, and eventually found a way through it. But again, I had people kind of going, well, Mike, is that the end of it? Is that the end of the running? And it could have been, because it's quite easy for us to go, well, it's because I'm older, rather than just going, it's actually just because I've got sciatica, or because I've got bone impingements in my ankles, or whatever it might be that we're dealing with. And because in your 20s or 30s you find a way through it, whereas when you're older the temptation is to go, well, it's just because I'm older. And then the other thing is just to stay strong. So part of what the sciatica kind of took me to a point where I'm working with a guy called Jermaine Olisan, who's an amazing strength and conditioning trainer. He works with a lot of the GB sprint squad. So he's sort of everything from guys who are running under 10 seconds for 100 meters to kind of me doing 100 milers and stuff. But he's just incredibly knowledgeable, and it's been great working with him just to get my strength up. And for me, I think it helped with the sciatica a bit, but I think the main thing was just the longevity and just sort of the sense that I have of moving forward. I don't sort of sit here feeling I'm getting weaker and older. I feel there's a chance, at least for a while, that I can be getting stronger. And that just feels, just from a sort of positivity point of view and performance point of view, just feels great, you know, for life in general, not just for running, of course. So
that's amazing that that you've come through that, because I know I'm sort of, I say I'm in my early 40s. Yeah, I'm 43, nearly 44, and I've been suffering with, and people listening on the podcast that listen regularly will be like, "Oh, here he goes again, talking about his injury." But I've struggled with. I had, you know, I had a couple of years ago. So right in the middle of COVID, I had issues with my back because of work, because of lifting wrong and stuff, and that led to sciatica. And it's horrific. Unless anyone's actually had it, it's really hard to sort of describe the feelings you get with like your leg giving way and just feeling like you set off running and it feels like, oh, it's going to be okay, it's going to be okay, and then suddenly that pain comes. And with me, it was I sort of kicked up loads of fuss at the doctors, and eventually I got seen for an MRI, and they said, yeah, you've got like there's a slightly bulging disc. It's not herniated, but it's bulging. It's possibly that is the cause of it. We'll go send you back to your sports physio guy, and he was like, yeah, do these exercises, and nothing worked. And eventually I went to sort of a friend of a friend said, I've got a guy that is he's done everything. He's a chiropractor, he's a physio, he's a masseuse, he's absolutely everything. People travel from like Cornwall all the way to the Midlands to see him. He's that good. And I was like, yeah, no one's ever that good. And went to see him, and he was like, I'll sort you. If I can't sort you first time, it'll only take a few goes. And literally, he was pulling me around. Didn't do it on the first go, and he was frustrated. Second time I went to see him, pop, it went back in again. And it was almost like literally like nearly overnight. Wow. Sciatica just disappeared. And then after that, I realized that it's probably been something that has been like that for a long time, because my gait was all, so I started having other pains elsewhere because things were pulled out of line, because I've been running with this, misalignment for so long that everything else, once it was put straight again, everything else was out of line. And there was loads of points along that sort of journey where people had sort of said to me, yeah, you're 40 now, you probably should, maybe stick to cycling, or have you thought about playing golf? Yeah. And I'm just like, no, I know, I look up to people like Jeff Browning, like in the States, like he's in his 50s. There's who else is there? Like Dean Karnazes. There's people that are running strong and even in this country, like Damien Hall and stuff, who's well into his 40s and still winning big races. And I'm like, no, I don't see why I should give up running when I still feel like I've got another 20 years of running in me. How do you sort of, did you feel any pressure to sort of stop running when you got those injuries, or were you sort of have got that laser focus that you were just going to keep going whatever happened?
There was probably, with the sciatica, sort of days when I was like, not is it worth it? I thought I would carry on in some way. I think I wanted to get back to the level where I could potentially run for GB again. And so it wasn't good enough just to be able to go and run a bit. And I think that was the thing that I felt I would be giving up and so there were probably days where I just thought, this is intractable. I can't actually get out of this. But then you kind of dust yourself off, or you wake up the next day or even later and you go, actually, no, I'm gonna press on. And things like, I think as ultra runners, we we have injuries, we have hard days out on the trail or the roads, and we do learn. I think I always say we're optimists. You know, we kind of, because we learn. And optimism isn't just that everything's going to be perfect. It's that we believe that we can find a way to a positive place through difficulty. And I think that it's just applying those kind of values in that situation. So I think I always knew I was going to try like hell anyway, and you know, and it did take a couple of years, but I'm sure there were days, obviously, when it didn't feel that good. But I mean, something like chronic pain, and the thing with sciatica and backs is it is actually really hard to know exactly what's causing the problem. So like you could get someone with a horrendous looking MRI and no back pain whatsoever, and someone with a very slightly herniated disc and they're in agony, and who knows if that's actually what's causing it. And you know, it's and with me, I had the MRIs, I went all to lots of different people and did the strength work. And I would just say to anyone going through that, try lots of different things. Yeah, I mean, it's great that in your case it was something specific, you found the guy that fixed it. You know, try some different guys, because you might, like you did, Sam, find the guy, the person, but just try different things. And the thing that eventually got me over the line was the addition of basically just some mental work I did, which is built around what we now know about pain, which is chronic pain is a learned response by the brain. So if I have an injury, maybe I tugged my back in the gym or whatever initially, and that gave me sciatica, my brain then got very good at firing that pain and me having that pain. And then all kinds of things are just associated. Oh, we're running, therefore the brain sends that pain. I knew there was nothing wrong with me, because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to run those 50 meters before the pain came on and then start every single time after walking for 3 yards or something. So it was literally just the brain firing out this pain. And I think I actually got a book that was very, very good and helpful at having ways to actually manage that pain. And just some simple exercises that's amazingly kind of really started to alleviate it. And again, it's not saying that the pain's not real. It is real. It's not imagined. You absolutely feel it. It's real. Your brain is generating that pain. It's more that pain is unnecessary. It doesn't have to be there. There's no actual injury associated with it. It's just a learned response. So, and that was the game changer for me, the final thing that just kind of, you know, tipped it over and got me to the point where I could run. Still with some sciatica, and I still have some problems, but it's completely different to where it was.
Yeah. What's the book? If it's the one I'm thinking of that I've.
Yeah, I'm going to grab it quickly. I mean, disappear from the camera, so if anybody watching, but I'll be 1 sec. It's right here in my.
I'll just play the piano while you go.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's worth punting it just yeah, just because it's a really simple book. So it's Heal Chronic Pain.
Yes, that's the one, The Way Out.
The Way Out, yeah. And I would recommend this to anybody who's got chronic pain. It's just like well researched. This is a proper medical approach with a lot of evidence. And yeah, if you're really struggling with any kind of chronic pain, I mean, I used to get things like weird pain in my wrists when I was a bit stressed, and I don't get any of that anymore. Since just, I feel it and I just go, well, it's not real. It's just this stress response I'm generating, and then an hour later, whatever, it's gone. So yeah, I would definitely recommend this book to anyone.
So for people that are just listening to the audio version and not aren't watching the video version, the book is called The Way Out, and who's the author? I can't remember.
Let me just grab that. So it's Alan Gordon. So yeah, The Way Out, Alan Gordon.
Alan Gordon.
Alan Gordon, yeah.
Yeah. So I listened to that on. Yeah, I don't have a physical copy. I listened to that on audio, but yeah, it was really interesting that book, because it was there were so many studies, wasn't there, people that had all this chronic pain for years and years and years and years, and literally within like weeks with some of them, he managed to reverse these neural pathways that they'd got and retrain their brains, and the pain had gone. And it was, I found it absolutely fascinating, and it didn't work with me. I think I would have needed to spend some time actually speaking with somebody professional to be able to do it. I struggled to. I mean, the issue I was dealing with and still dealing with is with my knee, with degenerative meniscus. So that's just generally flares up with inflammation. Some days there's nothing. Some days it feels like I can't stand on it. And doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason with it. Obviously, it's like a dose response to sometimes with how much training I do. But then there's other times when I'll be back to mileage that I used to run pre-injury, and it doesn't give me any issues. So yeah, there's a lot to sort of unpack with injuries, isn't there, going
Yeah, the
forward?
body's a strange thing, and yeah, and the thing with maybe with your back that there was an actual specific thing that needed to be sorted
Yeah.
out. It sounds like there was, so the pain can be genuine, valid pain. I think what we're talking about is obviously for someone who the injury has disappeared and you're left with the pain, and especially with sciatica, it can be the case. And yeah, so worth a look for those people dealing with those kind of problems. But anyway, yeah.
So the sort of the takeaway thing then is that age shouldn't really be a barrier. Injuries, we should be able to get through them regardless of what sort of point we're at in our sort of running history. And that yeah, the things are still great. Things are still possible in your 40s and your 50s, and you're an example of that, aren't you? The fact that you can keep going, you can put the miles in. Just you said earlier about your mileage being sort of low intensity but high volume. So could you sort of unpack that for people sort of curious about that? Because I know I am.
Yeah, so I mean, if I'm just kind of ticking over, I'll be 50 to 60 miles a week. And then when I'm heading, I go, okay, I identify a race and I'm in a sort of a 16-week sort of cycle to build up. I'll move up to about 70 miles in the week. And then I'll have a block maybe in the last 8 weeks where I'm sort of 75 to 90 miles. I'll have a couple of weeks where I might go 95, 100 miles. But that's very rare. And that'll be where I'm doing a big 6-hour run that week or something like that. So my biggest long run. So probably normally between sort of 60 and 80 is kind of normal for me. And then I'll have the big weeks, which are above 80. I just find above 75 miles, I struggle to do other things. I can do 70 miles a week and tick over 60 to 70 and it's fine. As soon as I go about 75, then I'm just really tired in the day because that's when I'm looking at doing doubles in the day. And after I run in the morning, I'm a bit of an afternoon person. So after I run in the morning, I just want to sleep the whole day. So yeah, I don't try to do high mileage for that long, maybe for like sort of 8 weeks, 8 big weeks before a taper. And that although most of those miles will be really easy running as well. And then some tempo work or sort of marathon effort type stuff. And I do a lot of, or most of my quality work on the treadmill, just because, which some people find unusual, but I just really like that I can just switch off, put it on whatever pace I want. I can compare it to last week. How am I feeling? How much have I done? Literally, I'll try to get on the exact same treadmill even, so I know it's an apt sort of comparison. And yeah, I actually find it a lot easier psychologically than doing speed work on the roads. Some people find it the opposite. But anyway, most of that volume is just easy running. And yeah, every now and then I'll do something a bit quicker, some strides just to keep the speed in the legs. But I avoid the sort of club interval session and stuff like that. And I have for many years, not because it's not valuable, just because for the kind of events I do, it's not essential, and it's just a bit of an injury risk. So best avoided.
Yeah, it's amazing that you're well into your 50s and you're still able to crank out 100-mile weeks when it's required. So just
Yeah,
just
another thing I would say is to have those periods where you're not doing that and you're not trying to do that. So the other things of after a race, even if it doesn't go to plan or I withdraw early, something happens, I'm sick or whatever, I'll do nothing for probably 2 weeks, like literally nothing. Some walking and that's about it. And then I'll train really light for like another few weeks just to really recover. And yes, you lose some fitness and there's some sort of coaches don't really like that approach because they're looking at the total base over time. But I'm looking longer term and sort of thinking, I want to be racing competitively for another 5 or however many years. So that's this approach has worked for me so far, and also not racing too often. So kind of eyeballs out racing twice a year, max, sometimes even once a year. It doesn't mean I don't do other events, but that kind of taking yourself, completely emptying yourself on an ultra, I don't try to do it too often, and I think that helps with longevity as well.
Yeah, because once you start getting in your 40s and 50s, you do start seriously thinking about longevity rather than just wanting to win races. You then start to think, well, if I sort of tone it down a little bit, I can run for another 5 or 10 years, and that then becomes your goal. And I think that's just probably just something that as you get older and more mature in the sport, you realize that why wouldn't you want to keep doing something that you love rather than emptying yourself out and not being able to race the next year. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, my sort of, if I have a hero, it would be this guy called Jeff Oliver. You may have heard of. So he was a 24-hour runner who's sadly passed away now. But when I did that 24-hour race in Tooting, he was there, and he ran, I think it was 77 miles at the age of 85,
Wow.
in that 24-hour. And at the age of 80, he ran 100 miles in 24 hours. So he holds the world record, V80 world record for 100 miles, which was about 20 seconds over 24 hours. And he to me is just like one of the most incredible athletes we ever had in this country, and he should be a household name. And I think it's really sad that he isn't. But he's obviously very revered in a lot of ultra circles, particularly the slightly crazy 24-hour community. So yeah, he's a very special guy, and when one of my sort of life aims, if I'm sort of blessed to sort of get to 80 and just to avoid, as I said, those catastrophic injuries that can happen, is to have a go at that 100-mile V80 record. And we'll probably have rockets in shoes by then, and the shoes will be sort of 80 inches thick, and heaven knows what we'll have. So maybe it'll be really easy to do. But even if I do 1 mile or whatever, if I'm alive, I'm gonna get on a track when I turn 80 and have a go anyway. So I think Jeff Oliver was just the most amazing man.
Wow, that's amazing. So yeah, in my ignorance, I probably heard his name before, but not looked into his records and everything. So yeah, that's an amazing achievement, and and a goal to have for the future for anyone that's because ultra running is a niche of a niche, and then you've got the niches within ultra running, haven't you? Where it's amazing to think that ultras can be anything from like a 50K up to like you were talking about. She trim, say his name, with the ones where you run around the block in New York.
Sweet Chennai, yeah.
That's it, yeah. It's just the range of races, the distances. It's just niches within niches within niches, and and I think I haven't personally done any 24-hour races. I've done long races where I've ran for days, but not specifically that category. So I think do you feel like that's a bit of a niche sort of distance to do? Well, it's not a distance, is it? It's a time. And do you feel like you're different to other ultra runners by focusing on 24-hour races?
Different, I suppose, in the sense that I love running on a track, or a small loop. So for anyone who doesn't know 24-hour running, they can be on. So like the one I did in Tooting was on a normal 400-meter athletics track. So it's just how far you can go in 24 hours. Some of them are on loops of about a mile, or that's normally about the longest that it is. But there's something really special about it, because it's like running strip bearable or artifice. If you're running up a mountain, you've got a view, you've got things you're looking for at you. You may be forced to walk up a real steep hill. You're always going to run the downs. Whereas on a track or just a flat loop, there's none of that. It's just up to you. You decide when you walk, you decide when you run, you decide the pace. I mean, there are things to look out for. You may be passing other athletes, and it's a bit like a video game, I find, kind of, especially in the night when you're sort of working out whether someone's going to move out the way. Do you go to the round to the right, or run, you know, inside them? And but ultimately, it's basically just you and time and what you can do with it. And at a sort of mental and emotional level, it comes with its own challenges, because it is just flat and you're in the same place. You haven't got views and stuff. And I'm going to plug my book called One Track Mind, which I wrote about that run in Tooting, because it was such a powerful experience, sort of emotional and mental and physical experience for me. Just for all the reasons I've described, just the fact you had this sort of ecosystem of people. You've got all the crews camping around this track on the grass. You've got all these people who are there through the night supporting these 45 kind of mad runners just running in circles. You've got all these completely different characters. People like, as I said, Jeff Oliver, like 85 years old. People like that. You've got GB athletes there, got this huge range of characters, and it's all happening there. You can see what everyone's doing. When someone's in trouble, everyone knows. When someone drops out, everyone knows. When someone's doing well, everybody knows. And it's like this goldfish bowl and this incredibly intense experience. So yeah, so I wrote One Track Mind, firstly to get that experience across, but also to get that common shared experience we have as ultra runners, because whether it's on a track or at the top of a mountain or whatever, there's those things that are common to all of us, that sense of being in something really special, that sense of community, that sense of how we challenge ourselves, the things we tell ourselves to find a way through the difficulty, the things we learn along the way. And so yeah, the One Track Mind was about capturing that shared experience that we have as ultra runners and trying to communicate it, even though the race itself was the niche of the niche, kind of thing. So yeah, I would recommend to anybody. It doesn't have to be a 24-hour event. There's a lot of sort of track or short loop events. There's like 6 hours or 12 hours. You know, go and do a 6-hour event on the track and just see if it suits you. And it's just something different about it, just because you're all together for the whole time, if nothing else. And you can get a drink or some chocolate every lap as well, every 400 meters, which is also a big plus if you fancy a few snacks along the way. Yeah. So yeah, as you can hear, I'm a passionate believer in those kind of events. I think they're very just unknown, and I think I'm on a bit of a mission just to share the amazing experience that they can be.
Yeah, amazing. I know. Yeah, I've only done one timed event, and that was a 6 hour, but it was on trail, so it wasn't. So it was on a forestry centre, and it was like a sort of meandering loop around the forest. And I wasn't sure how to approach it, because I'm just always doing like point to point races or circular races out and back sort of things. So it was I found it. It was after I'd had a really bad experience on one of the summer spine races where I'd done the sprint and got really dehydrated and was throwing up. And I used this 6 hour looped race to sort of dial in my hydration and electrolytes and stuff, because obviously you can just come back to the same points every time. So I took myself a big cooler, and I've got all ice in there, and I've got different types of drinks, different electrolytes, and I just thought I can experiment. And every time I went around, I was trying something out, see how that felt, and and it worked. I'd know it was a really hot day, and I had no issues with my stomach, anything like that, electrolytes and everything. So I sort of viewed that as a win. But I've not done, other than doing sort of track sessions, I've never done any real distance on the track, and it does appeal to me, because I've sort of came into the sport sort of looking up to guys like Zach Bitter in like the US ultra runner, who's that was his forte for a long time, doing track 100 milers and 24 hours and stuff, and doing like the six day events and everything. So it does interest me, and I'm sure it'll be something that once I get the spine race out of the way in January, that's maybe something that I could try.
Not quite a flat track race, so yeah, but you can go from one extreme to the other. That would be quite fun. Yeah, yeah. And if you, I mean, the nice thing about those sort of track or something is you can run fast as well. Like if you want to know, how fast you can run 100 miles or how far you can go in 6 hours or how fast you can run 100 kilometers, that's the place to do it. It's not going to be on a mountain or something like that. As you say, I think it's really, really smart move in terms of, you choosing that to go and try your different hydration and nutrition plans and stuff. It's a lot easier to do it that way, and you can sort of do iterative learning by doing a number of those sort of events and just sort of tweak things as well. So yeah, no, good move.
Yeah, that's interesting. So we've talked about you, and we've talked about longevity in the sport, all your amazing achievements, but obviously we want to talk about hour seven, the team hour seven. So can you sort of, for the listener, explain the origins of the team and what it sort of means, the bigger scope of it for, we talk about the professionalization of ultra running, that being a sort of thing that's, a hot topic at the moment. So where did it all start? What was the idea behind it and everything?
Yeah, I suppose the genesis was probably when I got into the GB squad, 24-hour squad, and I'd I suppose I'd seen pictures of, kind of Mo Farah on a treadmill in a lab, sort of being tested, and sort of assumed that those kind of things would happen at a GB level, whoever you were. The reality is that those sort of things are only available normally to sort of Olympic event athletes, and even then on a very limited basis. So there's a lot of our top marathon runners, for example, or cross country athletes don't get any of that kind of what I would call sort of Olympic support. And the same is the case with ultra running. So the money that there is, which is not a lot from the lottery and stuff, goes into funded athletes for Olympic events primarily. And then there is a bit that still comes. So for example, British Athletics, will send teams to the World Cross Country or to the World 24-hour, things like that. So they do fund teams, but the support around it is quite voluntary. So, and we're very lucky in the 24-hour environment. We've got Robbie Britton, who I know you've had on the pod before, and he's actually our athlete manager and team manager, and we brought him on board because of my experience with him in the GB 24-hour squad, and he helps a lot with the athletes, a lot of great advice. So we have some voluntary support there, but there was nothing else. And I thought, wouldn't it be great? I kind of got myself to that level partly by sort of making myself a virtual elite athlete. So I had the physio, I went and so went to the nutritionist. I went to the performance psychologist, someone I work with quite a lot, and really tried to do all the things that sort of an elite level athlete I thought would be doing and should be doing. I had the coach, I had everything. So I thought, wouldn't it be great if we could put those sort of things around some ultra distance athletes who are at kind of a GB level or just below the international level, and see what they could do. Firstly, just because why not? It'd be just like amazing, cool thing to do. And then also because I'm really fascinated by I guess what I call the science of endurance, both sort of on the mental and the physical side. So it was so the idea was, what could I learn personally as well, and what could we learn as a team about endurance? And then I do also like sort of sharing information and knowledge and things like that. And I love it when other people share it with me. So I thought as we learn as a team, it would be great to sort of share that learning on as well. So a mate of mine, Dom Ashdown, who's sort of my co-founder in the team. So I had a chat to Dom and sort of said, like, I've got this mad idea. And he was like, yeah, why not? He's quite a sort of a courageous guy who's quite into just why not? Let's give it a try kind of person. So yeah, Dom and I decided to do it, and we set up the team, and we started early last year. And the idea of the team, we started with 6 athletes, as I said, sort of at sort of international GB level. And the idea is to try to put sort of Olympic level expert support around those athletes. So we have, there's things we'd love to do that we can't. So we'd love them to have physio every week and stuff like that. We just don't have the budget yet. but they have access to sort of world-class performance psychology, to world-class strength and conditioning assistance, if that's in London or at least virtually, to advice on everything from training. Some of them are coached from within the team. They can go and work with our team physiologist, Dr. Jamie Pugh, who's based out of Liverpool, John Moores, who's absolutely world-class in his field, with around endurance in particular. Has worked with some of the best athletes in the world. So our athletes can work with him on an ongoing basis, including in the lab in Liverpool. So that's things like fine-tuning nutrition plans for major races and things like that, where we can do it at a very scientific level. So we're putting all of those things around the athletes. And then we've had, like this year, a couple of camps, including quite a long camp in Chamonix, which was about a month ago, and where we just get together and train and obviously do some scientific testing, like lactate testing in the wild, as it were, and other things like that. So yeah, that's the idea. And then, as I said, learning as much as we can and then sharing that learning. So like we've just started it's been quite a while now, a major recovery project where we're looking at the various aspects of recovery from a sort of science and a psychological point of view, and then going, okay, what are the things that we can try differently? And then there'll be some stuff that we're going to be sharing with the endurance community, not just running, coming out of that project, for example. Yeah, that's kind of where we are now. We've got 8 athletes at the moment, so we've added a couple. I mean, the reason we haven't got, when we started it, I was chatting to Dom, and I said, we start with 20 athletes or something. And just thank God we didn't, because, to be able to give people the kind of attention that they need to be able to do what we're trying to do with the budget that we have as well, we need to focus on not that many athletes. So we started with 6. We've got 8 athletes now, with a mix of people who do kind of looped events, like Sam Amend, who's the British record holder for 100 miles, which she set on the track. So people doing those kind of events, and then people like Tom, who was on your pod just very, very recently, running things like UTMB. So kind of covering the sort of broad spectrum. And yeah, kind of where we are now, I mean, Dom and I have been funding it. So it's been like starting any company, any kind of venture. So we spent a lot of money on it, so more than we thought we would at this point. And we have got a couple of sponsors, Science and Sports, SIS, the nutrition company, are on board now, which is fantastic. Given they work with some of the Ineos Cycling, I think Tottenham, Spurs, some real top teams. We're quite excited about that they're interested in working with us. And then Say Sky have been amazing as a kit sponsor from just pretty much the beginning. So we've been working with them as well. Hopefully quite close to bringing some other sponsors on board. And then obviously the more we can do in terms of sponsorship, the more we can do around working with our athletes, helping to develop ultra running more broadly in the UK, and hopefully other countries eventually. And then also being able to do more around the science side, and sort of eventually hopefully be able to do some studies. I mean, at the moment we do sort of case studies, but some more sort of detailed work would be wonderful to be able to do that eventually. So
it's interesting you sort of because that's how I kind of imagined it when you talk about a cycling team. In my head, like an ultra running team, I sort of figured that's the sort of way it would play out. But you mentioned sort of sharing that knowledge with other people in the community. I can't imagine like Ineos sharing sort of their insights for their athletes with the general cycling public. Is this like intentional that you're doing that to be sort of transparent, or do you just feel like you owe it to the community to give that information?
I think it's just ethos. So I think ultra running, we spoke about professionalization. I think at this point, ultra running is still a sport where, with very few exceptions, there's a lot of nice people, and there's a real sense of community and spirit and people trying to help each other. And there are so many cases in races where even at the front of the field, or the middle, the back, wherever, people helping each other. Seeing someone going off on the wrong route, and they're competing with them for the podium and calling them back. And
Yeah.
I mean, that just doesn't happen in a lot of other sports. And so I think that's the ethos that we have in the team. We want to win races, but the learning at both the athlete level and the team level is as important as winning races. So and I think so the sharing is very much a part of it. I mean, something like in cycling, obviously they're racing against each other in major races. I think maybe in 5 years' time, where there's our 7 team at UTMB, and there's another 3 kind of teams who are equivalent, it'll be maybe more competitive in that sense. But I hope that we will definitely still have that same ethos of kind of sharing what we learn, because that's always going to be a big part of what we're about. It's things like that. It's like things like making sure, so half our athletes will always be women, so female athletes, because again, we just want to develop ultra running more broadly. And so there's just, those things are kind of as important and more important to us than just going out and kind of winning some races. So there's some stuff starting to appear on our website. So we've got a resources section, and that's things like just some quite basic learning, some more sort of detailed. But we've started putting up things like just case studies. So you'll see in the next few days one coming up for Tom's race at UTMB. So what training did Tom do? Or myself, when I did the V50 record, what kind of training was I doing? What was I eating? Just some basic stuff like that I think is really helpful for people going into those kind of events, and just to get a gauge on what they're doing, and to see what other people are doing. So so that'll always be a big part of what we do.
It's amazing that you're right. Ultra running still is that community where you help each other out. If you see somebody going off course, you help them. Do you think we talk about the professionalization of the sport? Do you think it's a long way off then, where it would be so competitive and about money to the point where if you saw somebody going off course, you'd be like, stuff it, I'm getting the money.
I hope there'll always be a bit of that in the sport. I mean, I think we are coming up to a place of major change, and that's just because ultra is becoming bigger and bigger. It used to be you went and did your marathon, and it was amazing, and obviously it is amazing, but now people are kind of going, well, sort of a lot of people have done a marathon, so is there something else that I should do? And obviously ultras is an obvious place, and there's just so many races now. There's so many race organizers, there's so many options for doing different events, a lot of them in one I would like to mention, which is zigzag running, which is just like this really friendly community in the south of England, where you can go and do a 6-hour around a different course or whatever in such a relaxed atmosphere that it's completely different to how events used to be, where you used to feel you had to go and run 100 miles over a mountain or something like that. So there's so many options for people to do these events. It's just getting bigger and bigger, and there are going to be more moneyed events coming, I believe. We've seen obviously with UTMB and Ironman, we've seen this massive commercialization. So UTMB is a very different thing to what it was even 10 years ago. Whether it's good or bad will just, I guess, depend on individual perspective and how people want to see things. But it's certainly an event that a lot of people get a lot from. It's a very special sort of week, and that kind of ball is rolling. And I think there's going to be other things over time that maybe sort of come in as well. But will the big money come in? No, not for a long time. Well, maybe for a couple of races. But I think the days where there's a lot of money in ultra running and you can win at multiple races in the year, you can go and win a whole bunch of money. I think those days are still quite a long way off. I think there's going to be a few races like that, but not a whole lot. So I think the incentive to keep the community hopefully will always be there. And even then, how many people realistically are racing for those places or those, for that cash or whatever? Not too many. So
true. I can think of a couple that I think they're I don't know. I'll keep my opinions to myself about people's motives for stuff. But yeah, I can see what you mean. Sort of, there's so much variety in ultra running with different distances and different types of events, and it's changing all the time. And where you've got like backyard ultras coming in, things like that are just something completely different. But Barkley marathons, there's so much scope with ultra running, different types of races and distances. It would be hard to sort of encapsulate that in a professional sort of shroud. So yeah, I think you're probably right, where races like UTMB and Western States, it's a smaller race, but it's got a lot of hype. There'll be certain races that sort of probably will attract the professional ultra runner, but possibly because of that, they will make other races appear that are low key because it's a reaction to people that, I can't go to UTMB, I can't afford to go to UTMB, I can't get into UTMB, I'm going to do 100 mile with the same kind of vert over here, like do like a race in Wales or something, or Scotland. So it can only be good, can't it? Ultimately, it's all positive because money comes into the sport, but it causes other races to appear, and hopefully races are recovering after COVID as well, with that kind of downturn that we saw with people. I know a few race directors that were sort of saying, they were worried that it wasn't going to come back to how it was, but it seems to be sort of hopefully coming back to pre-COVID levels.
Yeah, I mean, races that used to sell out in half a day, and they're selling out, but it's kind of taking a couple of weeks or a few weeks. So yeah, it does seem to be coming back. Yeah, I mean, I think we'll see instances where there'll be sort of races with money, but I agree with you. I think there'll be this ecosystem sort of underneath it where I mean, it's almost like, some races don't really care whether they're UTMB eligible, for tickets in the lottery or whatever. They've just gone, we just don't really care, and the people running them don't really care. And I think there'll always be events like that are just there for their own communities. So I use the example of zigzag running, and there's other similar organizations that have literally just built a community around their events. And a lot of those athletes couldn't, most of them don't really care about running UTMB or whatever. At some point they might, but it's just not something that factors into their thinking all of the time or at all.
Yeah, each to their own with most things in life.
Yeah.
Where do you sort of like blue sky thinking? Where do you ultimately see Team Hour 7 going, like in the future? Where would you want it to go?
So given I've just said all this about sort of professionalism and sort of not happening in terms of big money and all that kind of thing, I mean, I don't think it's not something we started to get rich, thank God, because we've only so far just spent a lot of money. But obviously the first thing is to get it sustainable at its current form, and then I think there's definitely a model to, like the top apparel and shoe teams do with their athletes. So Tom Evans, for example, he's on a salary, he has kits and things like that. He's a full-time athlete. We would love to be able to do that with our athletes and to give them that opportunity. All of them work full-time, apart from Tom Jolie, who you spoke to recently, who's set himself up as at least for a while anyway, as a full-time athlete, and which I really obviously respect how he's done that. So some athletes just will want to have other jobs, but it would be great to give some athletes the option of becoming full-time athletes. It would be great to give them the option of some kind of a bonus when they go and they perform well, just because in other sports, top athletes sort of have those options. So why not? And it would be great to be able to help GB and UK ultra running develop athletes who are just below that level. So as Hour 7, we'd like to be able to be involved not just with the athletes we work directly with, but in helping other athletes who are sort of have the potential to be sort of GB level athletes. So that would be really, really good. As a team, I guess at some point it would be great to have squads in a couple of other countries as well, because I think if the model works, then we can do it in some other places. And sort of have sort of a bit of a sort of international flavor to it as well. And then I guess sort of at the commercial side of it, all this happens because we've got really strong sponsors, and we model ourselves a little bit on NN running. So for anyone who doesn't know NN running, so that's so NN is a Dutch insurance company, and they sponsor a team that looks after Eliud Kipchoge and a lot of the top Kenyans and Ethiopians, and they have a camp I think now in Ethiopia as well. I think there's a camp in Kenya. They work with the top Dutch athletes as well. So and that's what they do is made possible because they have the level of sponsorship to do the things that they do. And so we believe we can get to that level of sponsorship and do some really exciting stuff in ultra running. And then alongside of it, obviously, where we can and we see opportunities to supplement the income of the team, if we maybe find a great product that helps with recovery, for example, or something like that, then and that helps us to be able to do more on the team, then we'll do that as well. But the key thing, as I said, is the athletes and it's the science. So as long as we can help athletes and we can keep learning new things, then we'll be happy.
Yeah, so it's full respect for you taking the plunge with that, because obviously you've put a lot of man hours into that, and
Yep.
and I suppose at this point you're yet to see it coming back towards you, aren't you? It's a lot of your hours and your money going out.
Yeah, I suppose but that's not coming back as the money and the time's gone in. I guess what, unfortunately, as an athlete, I've benefited as well, because I've learned a lot, both as an athlete, but also, one of the reasons, and whether it's psychological or physical, and just talking to guys like Jamie Pugh and of course Robbie, or and some of the other experts that we've spoken to, and we've spoken to some world experts. If we find something, Dom and I go, wow, that's interesting, who's the best person in the world to talk to about that, we get in touch with them and we have a call, and that's just been incredible. So as a sort of stimulus to do those things, it's been amazing. And then to be able to go and run with just a group of amazing athletes at a camp, that's been incredible. And we had an altitude camp last year in Gresne Valley in Italy, and we've had some smaller get-togethers, and then this year in Chamonix, and so that's been a great personal experience. So it's been enriching on multiple levels as a life experience. It's just that now, it's an expensive life experience. So now obviously we need to get it to the point where it's self-sustaining, and then kind of build from there, which, as you say, things coming back in a different sense as well. But certainly at this point, no regrets.
Awesome. So how can people sort of get involved with the team? Can you if someone was listening to this and they have an area of expertise, do you wanting people to sort of get in contact with you and offer help? Sponsors get in touch with you, that kind of thing. Is just, are you putting a call out to people now, sort of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Please, if you're sort of sitting there listening in your firm or your company, you think they might want to get involved. Obviously, we're talking about the kind of values you'd be associating with is, things like community, obviously the outdoors, stepping into challenge. It's a massively positive space. And I think brand, obviously there's some amazing content and media as well that can come with it. So stuff that I think your clients or your customers will really identify with, and positive brand values that I think would be very good for your business. And then for your team internally, if you're listening to this and you're someone who has a large team, the things that we can bring from ultra or from elite performance in sport. Again, how we deal with adversity, stepping into challenge, mental performance, nutrition, all of these things, recovery. These are all things that are very valuable as things within your organization and your culture. And a lot of organizations are sort of looking at sort of trying to be well, and a lot of the wellness stuff, which is positive. But I think this is a chance for something like Hour 7 to have positive stories where people are stepping into challenges and working with adversity and coming out the other side in a very positive way. And I think it could be some great stories for people, whether it's us coming in to chat about it, or just sharing those things with your team and your customers. I think that could be really important. So yeah, sorry, a bit of a pitch there, but so that'd be great. And then obviously any experts as well. We're always keen to talk to people who are expert in their field. So anybody can contact either through myself, which I don't know if you put out any notes on.
I can put links if whatever.
Yeah, my contacts.
Yeah.
Right. Otherwise, on like Instagram, Michael Stocks Runner. So it's Michael Stocks Runner, or the team Hour 7. So it's just the word hour, so HOUR, and then the digit 7.com. And just the contact there would be great as well for anyone who wants to chat to us. So that'd be good.
Awesome. So there's plenty of scope there for people if they want to get involved then. So
and for anyone who just is interested in what we're doing, obviously please jump on board and follow us, because we're it's going to be a really interesting, I think, sort of journey to see how the team develops and how things unfold. And also, as I said, the resources section on the website, there's some pretty useful information there that might just help sort of stimulate ideas for anyone who's an ultra runner looking to improve their performance. And just keep an eye on that section, because we're going to be adding a whole bunch more stuff quite soon.
Yeah, awesome. So if you're a wealthy benefactor, if you're sat on a big pile of money and you're listening to this podcast,
I want to talk to you.
Get in touch, because you can. There's plenty of scope for helping out. Awesome. So
Right.
I'll put all that information in the show notes. Any information you want to give me to sort of hand out in that, and I'll put it out. And I'm looking forward to seeing it. Like I said to you earlier, I had heard you interviewed before, and I'd heard of the team, but it wasn't until I spoke to Tom Jolly, and I sort of put it all together and realised, what kind of concern it was, and this, you're going to do great things in the sport. I'm sure of it.
Right, thank you, Sam. Really appreciate it, and appreciate your support and giving me the chance to spread the word today. So thanks very much.
Awesome. Thank you for coming on. Appreciate it.
Thanks.